Welcome to Call to the Table, where occasionally we decide to switch jobs. I'm Jordan, and I'm doing Olivia's job today.
Wait, I thought John was next.
No.
Counterclockwise.
Way.
I'm Caroline, and I just entered this conversation.
And you're directionally challenged. Oh, yeah.
You can introduce me.
Oh, and our guest, because we've had a guest this month, and it's been really nice having a guest. Can we just first off take a second? It's been really fun having you as our guest this month.
Thank you.
It's been nice having somebody else in the conversation other than just us four.
Yeah.
Like, it's been really, really nice.
Revitalizing everything.
It has been. You've made it just enlightening again.
Yeah. So
I'm Olivia, and I'm just kidding. I'm Clara, and I'm a guest.
Yeah.
I'm the guest speaker.
this is the last episode of the month, and so I think people know that you're the guest.
Yes.
Yeah,
But just in case they forget.
I helped them.
I mean, if they haven't figured it out and they've listened to any of the other ones, help them.
Yes, it's fine. I'm Olivia, and I'm taking over Jordan's role this week.
And I'm John, and this time I'm the caboose. The big caboose.
You're just there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So, this week we are talking about Christ in the mainstream media. And it's really cool because I can't take credit for this idea because it was not my idea to begin with. In fact, it was my fiance's idea. And I was like, hey guys, let's add this to our list. And then we were like, oh, let's talk about what we're going to do. And I was like, let's do this one because it was my fiance's idea, and I'm really excited about it.
So we've had 2 listener suggestions for this month.
Yes.
Which is really cool.
So first off, I want to start with, we kind of have this preconceived idea of what Christians typically, what kind of route they take for mainstream media being, and our main focus is, as far as like what we're going to talk about this week, is movies, music, and then if we have time, we're also going to talk about TV shows. So let's start off with what kind of family dynamic did we grow up in with mainstream media? Being, were we allowed to listen to certain music? Were we not allowed to listen to certain music? Were we allowed to watch certain movies? Were we not allowed to watch certain movies? Obviously with some of the exceptions / obvious ones of rated R movies versus PG-13 movies. Like, obviously, like, I was allowed to watch, PG-13 movies when I turned 13. I was allowed to watch certain rated R movies prior to them, being 17, 18, but,
No,
obviously,
we were all allowed to watch rated R movies at the age of 5.
Yeah, well, there's obviously some exceptions in that area, but kind of the stereotypical, kind of gearing around the stereotypical aspect of, were you allowed to watch certain movies? My parents allowed us to watch, pretty much anything that was age appropriate. And as long as we could, and there were some aspects where we had to find Christ within it, but there wasn't really a whole lot of restriction on, you can't watch this. I mean, we grew up watching The Simpsons.
Yeah.
We grew up watching different things like that, so I didn't really have any restriction on that. Like, I could watch Harry Potter, and I know that's kind of like a taboo in the Christian world right now, and in that time too, but I could watch Harry Potter when I was younger. I had to, be sound in my faith and be sound in what I knew was right, what I knew was wrong, but my parents kind of allowed us in that so we didn't go seek it out later. John?
I mean, my family watched The Simpsons. That was one of the few things my family actually did together.
Yeah.
We never had any problems with that. I was watching rated R by the time I was even 13.
Yeah.
That really wasn't an issue with my family. They didn't really care that much.
Yeah.
I mean, with Harry Potter, my mom actually read that to me and my older brother as bedtime stories.
Yeah.
And when we went on trips, we'd read it, and that we went from 1 all the way through 7 that way.
Yeah.
And of course, we had to wait for, 7 to come out, but
But she had an age limit on that too. She's brought that up with your younger brother.
With my younger brother, yes. He's kind of had more of the age restriction stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why exactly that hit. I think a lot of it actually has to do with my older brother.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a different topic for a different day.
Yeah.
But
See, I found my brother has the opposite. He's allowed to play certain video games and he's allowed to watch certain things at a younger age than when I was his age.
seeing,
Yeah,
That's what my older
It's
sister
the whole
always-
older,
Yeah.
the whole older sibling curse.
Oh yeah, which I don't mind, but I think it's funny that like your younger brother has the flip
yeah,
than mine.
and I have seen people do this even to themselves of restricting what they can watch. I helped lead a friend of mine to Christ when I was in 4th grade, and he was a huge Harry Potter fan, and after he accepted Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, took the hard stance of it's witchcraft and
Wizardry.
thank you. I'm not going to watch that. And he did it to himself, and it's like, that's not what that was about. In my again, that was a personal view, and I never sat there and flat went, "You got it wrong, dude," because that wasn't my place.
For me growing up, my parents never allowed us to watch like Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and stuff like that because of the magic and because of that stuff. But in general, it was more of like, I'm realizing as I get older, it was more of the fact that that's just not their taste. I mean, there was some like with the magic and witchcraft and wizardry and stuff like that. That was kind of the reason for us not watching it. But like I said, as I've gotten older, that's not their taste. Like, they're not real into fantasy and fiction and stuff like that. And so I think it was more of they didn't want to have to explain something that they themselves didn't really understand. They didn't have a defense for it because it wasn't something they were interested in. And so even now there are shows that I'm interested in, like, Doctor Who and stuff like that. That's not necessarily Christian based, but it's something I like watching because I look at it from the cinema aspect. I look at like how they do certain things and how they wrote that storyline. I come from like the theater side of it, so I'm able to sit there and dissect it for just the cinema aspect and realize that it's fiction.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm realizing now growing up and seeing how their interests haven't changed from when I was younger. And it's like, oh, it's just, that was their taste. Like, they just didn't want it in the house because they weren't interested in it. Like, okay, that makes sense. And they still don't, like my dad is over there watching like documentaries. They're not out watching, rated R movies where there's a lot of shooting and stuff like that. My dad's watching historical stuff where there's a lot of shooting. But that's just kind of their taste and their interests. So yeah, I was not raised where that was allowed in the house, but they've never, as I've gotten older and I am starting to watch that stuff, they don't oppose it.
Right.
They're not mad that I do. They just want to make sure, like you said, Liv, that I'm grounded and I know what's real. And honestly, like with Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, I'm glad that I watched it when I was older.
Yeah.
Because then there was no confusion.
Right.
In, okay, what's real and what's not, and I'm able to see the Christian aspects of it that come in better now as an adult.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've been watching Harry Potter this year for the first time, and I'm so excited.
My fiance has finished since
I know, he's ahead of me.
But for the first time he watched it with me, and that was pretty much the most exciting thing, I think, being able to introduce that to him.
I actually just remembered one movie my parents didn't want me to see, but I ended up seeing anyways. The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Ugh, I don't watch those. Those are too real for me.
Yeah, you.
All right. So, I was a Disney fanatic ever since I was a child. So, keeping me on a leash or whatever was not very hard because all I wanted to watch was Disney movies. I mean, I will say, didn't have cable. Made that very easy. I was just watching PBS. Although there was that one time, I don't remember why they didn't want me to watch Pokemon, but I lied to my grandmother about it so I could watch Pokemon. And now it's like, Pokemon is like one of the most innocuous things ever. So, but they never were really that restrictive because what music did I listen to? Disney songs. Or whatever bands that my parents liked. And not that I listened to or that I liked everything that they liked. But I kind of ended up doing, some of their own stuff. And really, I started branching out more when I was on the internet and when I was able to go to the library by myself in school. And I probably read books in there that my parents might not have wanted me to read, like that one time in 6th grade when I found books on Egyptian mythology, and they had blatantly naked people in there.
Mhm.
And here I am, a little 11-year-old, like, ooh, boobies. Ooh, we're talking about, they did that to each other, okay. So that was a lot to learn when you're 11. But, and of course, being on the internet in the early days, you saw stuff whether you liked it or not. And Mom has no idea how much stuff I actually know. And I intend to keep it that way because I don't think a lot of people really want to know how much I know. I don't want to know how much I know, but I have to.
Well, I mean,
Right.
you also got to take a look at difference in cultures. We come from a Puritan background in America. If you were to came from Europe, those images are in the square.
Honey, I'm not talking about nudity. I'm talking about the internet as an entity.
I get that.
You get
I was going off of what you initially were saying because I wanted to interject.
No, I
didn't want to interrupt you.
I wanted to interject. Ooh, John. No, so I wasn't really that restricted. I mean, my dad was the one who introduced me to Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Star Trek, and a lot of those things I didn't really take root in super hard until I was older. Like, I loved Narnia. Like, that was my first real big fantasy series. That was just
that's
my childhood.
That's the first fantasy series I remember my parents being okay with me watching
because
as a young kid. No, because it was C.S. Lewis, and my mom is such a big fan of C.S. Lewis, and so she knew that was something she was already interested in, not necessarily the Narnia series, but she was okay with C.S. Lewis.
I got you. But, no, I mean, I guess because I never got into any, magic stuff or whatever that was super hardline. It's that was Disney at its golden age, when they were coming out with either original adaptation or straight up original story after original story, and it's Disney can do no wrong, and, we've got the animated stories of the Bible. You've got VeggieTales in its heyday. It's there was so much stuff out there for me that I just wanted to see.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to see horror stuff. I didn't want to see shoot 'em ups. I thought that crap was boring. Okay. So they used to tape movies for me. If we didn't own the movie, they'd tape it for me. Sometimes it was an ice skating special that they had, because they did so many Disney on Ice things back then. And there was one tape. I don't remember what they had taped it from, but I would get really freaked out at one point and go and talk to my mom, or, just go and see her, and she's like, what is Caroline having nightmares about? What's freaking her out? It was a Chucky commercial.
Chucky.
And she's like, I didn't realize this was on here. So, yeah, I kind of didn't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
So, I wasn't super restricted. When Harry Potter came out, I mean, she let me read the books. She let me see the movies.
Yeah.
The reason why I stopped reading them is because in book 5, when Harry gets possessed, I was kind of not super okay with this, because that sort of was an old internet term is squick.
Yeah.
Where it's you're if somebody else is, okay, but for me that is my limit.
Right.
So I've become more of a self-limiter, I guess, because I know what I'm comfortable with and what I'm not. And some of that has changed since, I know I talked about this before, when I went to my church university. And because I tend to lean on the side of wanting to be a perfectionist, I kind of took things a little too far, and I ended up chucking some stuff that I really do care about and I don't see as harmful, like Lord of the Rings and other stuff. And it's when you understand the history behind it, who the person was as they wrote, authorial intent, and all this other stuff, it's no, I'm okay with this, I mean, and sometimes, because I work in a library, I'll pick up a book and I'll read it, and I'll get to a point, and it's no, I'm not really okay with, the direction the author's going with this. But that's because it's based on my own beliefs, I'm not going out there and just being okay, nobody else can read this book, whatever, I have set my own limits based on my own beliefs and what I feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Because, and I really truly owe that to the fact that I had parents who were not like, no, you can't look at this. No, you can't look at that. You know, they didn't want me looking at stuff on Sabbath that wasn't about God. But it's like, we had animated stories from the Old and New Testament. We had Veggie Tales. We had, like, old biblical movies. I mean, we had a gigantic amount of stuff to watch. You know, so, and we'd go to Callaway Gardens and do all this other stuff. So, you know, it's not like I'm sitting at home bored and they're, like, thumping me over the head with a Bible or something. No, I had so much media. I was basically raised by Disney movies. So, yeah, that was my experience, which I feel is a little unique in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is completely different
opposite.
than
Yeah.
any of.
That's
I
kinda
was
what we
allowed to
figured.
watch like Pride and Prejudice when I was like 5, but I wasn't allowed to
Ooh.
watch Brave or Ariel when I was 12.
Wow.
So like, no, I wasn't even. Yeah. So my parents had
Okay.
a strong belief that nobody was allowed to watch anything until they were at the point where we could make our own decisions and our own choices, which was really challenging growing up.
Yeah.
Just because even my cousins, who we grew up really, really close with them, they were allowed to watch a lot more. So yeah, that was really hard for my siblings. Even my sister, before she got married, wasn't allowed to watch. What is it? The one with Katniss in it. What's that called?
The Hunger
Hunger
Games?
Games?
Hunger Games.
She wasn't allowed, before she got married, she wasn't allowed to watch the Hunger Games.
What is getting married gonna
So,
change?
Then, it was just very narrow.
Yeah.
And then since then, because of my two brothers that are adopted, they are very, it's still very narrow for them, which is completely understandable because of what they've been through in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes total sense, but we're allowed to watch what we want to watch, and as kids, we just kind of keep it quiet.
Yeah.
So yeah, very, very narrow. Even my siblings were allowed to watch Star Wars before I personally was.
Yeah.
Are you what is your position in the
Twin.
line?
Youngest of, so 5, 1, 2, 3, and then me and my twin brother.
Which of you is older?
Me.
Oh, okay. So you're technically 4, but I get that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So they were all allowed to watch it, and then I came along after them. So
That's kind of like, I don't know, because you'd think most parents are like, okay, with the first kid, we got to make this one perfect.
exactly.
And then, middle kid, they're a little more lenient. By the time they get to the youngest, they're like, go play in the dirt with a gun.
Well, that's why we were saying it was so funny
Yeah.
that Josh is getting more of the age restrictions.
Yeah,
than-
same thing
They
with you.
handled it more as an individual situation for each child. So if they saw that it was unnecessary for one kid to be watching something, then they would remove it. So it was that's how they understood it as parents, and that's I respect that as their kid, but that's how they did see it, and they didn't remove more the love aspect of things. So like, we were allowed to watch like any romantic movies that we wanted to, but there
Right.
was no violence and no cuss words and none of that. So it's very,
Okay.
very interesting, because growing up, you're like, oh, I'm not allowed to watch this and this. But did your parents allow you to watch, like, more, like, romantic movies versus, like, which one were you allowed to watch first? Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't
That's
remember.
a good question.
Yeah, I don't remember there being a defining.
Mm-mm.
I grew up on Star Wars. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine was all fantasy, action. There was romance in Disney movies. That was my romance.
Yeah.
There was kissing and deep,
I still haven't
looks
seen
into the
Ariel,
eyes.
so.
Honestly, the biggest
Still seen a Little Mermaid. Oh my
girlfriend.
goodness.
The
Little Mermaid, I didn't
biggest.
know
Ursul's like the best bad guy.
We'll agree to disagree.
Still.
No, honestly, the biggest milestone I remember reaching was in 7th grade or 8th grade. A friend of mine lent me Titanic. And that was the first.
And
Hate
thus an obsession was
movie.
born.
Hate
Not with the
that
movie. There's so many things wrong with it. Don't
I
get me on
just
that.
mean with Titanic. Thus her
Well,
obsession with Titanic.
the reason
itself.
why I got the movie was because I was interested already in the,
Oh,
in the
okay,
ship,
never mind.
but she had seen the movie already, and she
Never
knew
mind.
about the specific part. But that was the first time I remember, and that was in this house. That was in my old bedroom. That was here. And I remember coming home and being like, but it's Titanic, and I want to watch Titanic. And my mom, made a deal with me. She's like, when it gets to that part, if it shows anything, you fast forward. And I honored that for the fact that that was a triumph that I had achieved.
Oh, I was thinking of two different things.
No.
I was thinking of the carriage scene. You're talking about the drawing scene.
Yes. Because you don't see anything in the carriage scene.
Right.
So, except for a hand.
It's like...
High five the carriage! But yeah, that was the only part that...
I hate Titanic.
There's so many things wrong with it. Again, whole nother topic for a whole other day.
Whole nother topic for a whole other day.
Don't get me on that.
Oh, girl! Okay, randomly,
ADD.
we really truly could do a whole thing on Titanic because there's so many things that happened that had to do with God, people having forebodings about it.
It's just gonna be me talking the whole time.
No,
You don't want me to do it.
I'll do it with you.
We'll dip out on that one.
I've only seen it once, and
John won't let me watch it
at the time.
anymore.
Anyway, okay, so I was gonna take this in a different direction really quick.
Oops.
But I can't remember what it was.
All I was saying is I don't remember being a defining moment. Just the more freedom I got when we moved to the house my parents currently live in now, and I was upstairs and I was away from them. My music changed. I got all my brother's hand-me-down music that he burned on CDs, and so it was a natural thing. And I don't ever remember my parents kiboshing that unless the music was too loud.
Right.
I was the stereotypical one that had it blasting out of my TV, and they were like, turn the music down! But I was, listening to, Linkin Park and Fall Out Boy and,
Ooh.
Yeah, stuff that they would not have allowed me to listen to in the car. But they they just didn't, I don't know if it was that they just didn't know what was the content of the music, or if it was just more of eh.
It was probably that.
Or, honestly. No, because I had it loud enough. They could hear it, so that was their biggest thing, was turn the music down.
Yeah.
So, let's start with movies.
Okay.
Just as because that's the easy one.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's easy to visually sit there and watch a movie and seek out the Lord through mainstream media. Now, I'm not talking about movies that are clearly centered around God.
Like God's Not Dead.
Right.
That came out a couple years ago.
Yeah, God's Not Dead,
God's Not Dead
the
too.
the most recent one about what's his face.
Yeah, I know what
you're talking about too.
Oh,
Jeremy Camp.
Yeah, Jeremy Camp.
Jeremy Camp.
I still believe.
Not talking about very specific story moments of clearly seeing God, but I'm talking about finding God in mainstream media, really looking, having to sit down and dissect. Is there a way you can utilize this particular movie or series of movies can you utilize it to preach the gospel?
Star Wars.
I could go off on so many
Star
movies.
Wars.
I mentioned in the last podcast, and I can real quick, my fiance and I sat down and kind of dissected how the Bible can be paralleled to the 9 movies, and there are some additional elements to it that we're watching. We're 1, 2, and 3, or sorry, 1 and 2.
Star Wars, right?
Star Wars.
Okay, I'm making sure.
I'll get into my main topic in just a second, but 1, 2, Clone Wars, and most of 3, Old Testament.
Yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah.
Acts and on, but up until Revelation, 9. The cartoon series, Legends.
Yeah.
Revelation.
There you go.
We were able to put these pieces together because you have the prequel, the kind of before things really got serious, before the rise of darkness, the true, I need to send somebody to really take out this darkness.
Yeah.
1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
In Clone Wars, because the darkness kind of shows its awful head here in the third Star Wars movie. I'm talking Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, 1, 2, and 3. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are very clearly depicting, how does good overcome evil, and how is that spreading throughout? How do we see this light side kind of come out and truly penetrate this darkness, and we have a new focus and a new covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Acts until, right before Revelation, it's very clearly Rise of Skywalker. It's that nice concluding, like, here's how we should move forward. Here's how the disciples kind of sent themselves out and really, spoke to each of the churches and built the church.
Yeah.
Being 9. And then I have yet to see Legends, but my fiance is very, very adamant. Like, it has a lot of prophetic moments in Legends that kind of build off of the Skywalker saga that kind of go past that Rise of Skywalker moment. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, we really just sat down and broke down, like, the Bible versus, like, how the series kind of played out. But I can talk about Harry Potter all day, and I can put that parallel together. But I want to real quick, I was allowed to watch the Matrix trilogy at a very young age.
Good to know.
I watched it as it came out, yeah.
Yeah. We had to skip some of the inappropriate scenes.
That didn't.
That's just because, like, my parents were like, okay, my brothers were really young. I could have probably been okay with it, but my brothers were still young, so it was like we could watch fight scenes in the storyline because of how often the director throws in Christianity. He uses different aspects of the movie to bring up, like, hey, this theme right here, this one right here, yeah, it's based off of this in the Bible. And he does that through different, like, aspects of character building. Neo being the one, Trinity being a representation of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, Morpheus being who he is and that kind of guide, that kind of, like, he builds this Neo up and is like, I believe in you no matter what, and kind of like this Paul character. And then you see Zion, and it rises up in the Matrix, and the desire to have Zion be reborn because of this evil that has built on the earth, and how they are in constant war with the machinery and this matrix that has been built.
Yeah.
Free will, they at the end of it, they really have this free will of whoever wants to stay in the matrix can stay and live peacefully, but if not, they have that free will to join us and follow
You even get that in the first one. Blue pill with a red pill.
Exactly. And then there's minor moments throughout the 3 movies where if you look at the license plate on the cars, it is literally Bible verses.
That's awesome.
That depict that location in that story within the Bible. And I loved it. But we were allowed to watch it because of how close it was to the Bible and how close it was to Christianity and how you can actually depict, where that particular media was going for. And then, just real quick to brush on Harry Potter, I mean, you have the boy who lives, this boy who's living on this earth for, at this point, 17 years, with this constant temptation of being evil. This constant, like, I can choose to do this. I can choose to go off and be, and that clearly depicts the temptation of Christ. Christ was tempted by Satan himself.
You would do well to go into Slytherin.
Exactly. The whole second book is like...
Well, that's the first book, but...
Yeah.
Well, in Chamber of Secrets, the Sorting Hat literally sits there and is like, I told you could have easily been Slytherin. And they all think he's the heir of Slytherin. They all are like, you are not who you say you are. Like, they're telling Harry, you are the heir of Slytherin. And he's not. He's like, no, I'm not. I'm not that person. And then we get further in the books and we get further throughout the story and we see Voldemort come up and he is a literal snake. Like, he is a snake. Like, he depicts Satan so clearly as a snake. And then...
See, here's the funny thing, though. Like, I don't understand people who are like, yes, I'm Slytherin, because it's like, dude, you're literally under the symbol of the devil. Like...
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there, but, like, I think it's more so post-War of Hogwarts type pride in Slytherin, because it has this redemption to it. Slytherin then gets redeemed. Like, we see Malfoy redeemed. We see all of these main Slytherin characters who have this redemption feel to it.
It's just, for me, it's like a lion, a snake. The biblical symbolism is just so strong. It's like, why would anybody want to be associated with the big bad voodoo snake?
I mean,
Like,
But why are there people going, like, talking about in today, why are there people who want to be associated with the fact that they're not Christian? I mean, it's the same. Why would you want to turn away from, why would you want to turn towards something that's so negative and so, I'm trying to think of a good word, chaining is the only thing I can think of. But why would you want to go toward that? It's the free will. It's the pride in sitting there and being like, well, they get all these great things. Look at what the losers are getting.
Yeah.
That's how Satan traps you. I mean, that's a big thing to look at.
I'm just thinking about the fandom. Like, I know
And quoting
what
God's not dead.
Yeah.
I know, that they say, Slytherin has good qualities. It's just, for me, it's just like, still got that snake and lion thing.
Yeah, and I understand that.
That's my personal thing.
Absolutely.
So,
And that kind of furthers my point of, like, clearly, it doesn't matter what walk of life you are.
Yeah.
God still has the power to redeem your life.
Yeah.
And take you out of whatever you were born into, whatever your excuse is. Well, I was poor, God's not going to love me. Well, I was gay, God's not going to love me. Well, I was a murderer. Well, God's not going to love me.
I was
murdered.
No!
Olivia,
I think we
the
missed
fact
a
that you
step.
chose.
I'm offended now!
The fact that you chose to murder somebody greatly offends
No.
me.
But, like, it doesn't matter which house they were in, that redemption story is still there.
Yeah.
And then we see in the final book, like, the need of that sacrifice. They have destroyed almost all of these Horcruxes, all of this, the fact that 7 is used. He has his soul split in 7 places, and he can't be killed. This evil cannot be destroyed. And then we find out that Harry has one of those, and he has to sacrifice his life to save everybody else, because once he does that, evil can be defeated.
And Neville chops off Nagini's head with a sword that's in the shape of a cross.
Exactly.
Poor Neville.
No, he turned into a hero.
Oh, just wait.
No, I know. Trust me, I know. But you just sit there, especially at the very beginning, and you're just like, poor Neville.
I know, he gets beat up so many times.
And his parents, and
He's a bit, his grandparent,
But
his
it's like,
grandmother,
and
Poor
we
baby.
see these Death Eaters who are followers of Voldemort, who are blind to, in choosing this evil, to who he really is, and that
White
kind of
supremacist.
Well, and it shows me, like, what the Antichrist is really going to be able to do.
Yeah.
Like, take these followers who think that's the right way to go, who thinks we need to destroy mankind, we need to take over this world. Like, that's insane to me. But, like, my parents trusted that was going to be a depiction of good and evil. Mm-hmm. They trusted that and let me watch it and let me read it, and I was able to come to that conclusion, of, like, I came and I was like, oh my gosh, I finished the 7th book, let me tell you where I can minister from here, because Harry had to die, and then you could defeat death. Mm-hmm. Depict Voldemort being death. Like, it was just this cool realization for me of, like, and it was a real first, besides the Matrix, this real first eye-opener of, I have so many friends who believe that this is a bad movie to watch. I have so many friends whose families are like, can't watch it because it's witchcraft. Yes, but even J.K. Rowling told Oprah, I built this world and I created this world with my Catholic beliefs in mind.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
And I'm like, she did it because people now can see this, and if they ever hear someone preach the Bible, the first thing that they can think of is that they relate to is, I know this story from somewhere. I read this in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Purr.
John,
Purr.
do you have a movie that you are like, my stutter just happened. Do you have a movie that you can you have resonated with, that you watch and you're like, I can clearly see God? I can do the same about Wonder Woman, by the way.
Oh, that's a good one.
I mean, of course, I can see it in there, but it's not one of those things that ever was huge for me.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, for you, you can watch this stuff because you were allowed to watch it, to find this stuff. I was just allowed to watch it.
Right.
So I wasn't looking for that stuff. I didn't start looking for that stuff not until more in like high school.
Right.
I agree.
And
Yep.
and at that point, it wasn't that I was looking for it, but it came up in like school projects of, well, start looking for underlying meanings in these movies, and I was like, well, if I could start looking for here, I could start looking for it here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't a big thing for me.
Right.
So this is really one of those subjects that's like, okay, this is not huge for me. Yes, it exists, and I'm glad it exists.
Yeah.
Because in Romans, it does talk about how throughout everything in the world, you can come to the conclusion that God exists.
Yes.
And whether that's through the mainstream media, or whether that's through biology, or through astronomy.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I'm glad it exists, but it's not a big passion for me.
Yeah. See, this is a big passion project
See, and
for
like
me.
with music, because we
Love
also
it.
talk about music, I didn't even really start caring about music. I mean, I started caring in 5th grade. I didn't care that much. It really didn't care horribly much until after me and Jordan got together.
Yeah.
And even still, I don't care that much.
Yeah.
For me, it was more of, obviously, like the first time I ever saw a movie that clearly depicted something very obviously Christian that was not necessarily classified as Christian was Narnia.
Right.
The books do it better justice than the movies do.
Yes.
No freaking duh.
Yeah. But honestly, the thing that I've started noticing more recently is, and Liv, you kind of touched on this, was if you look at all the movies that have like a main villain, there's always a bunch of people that come with them, and to me depicts two different things. It depicts the fact of what happened with Satan when he was kicked out of heaven.
Yeah.
The fact that he had followers.
Yeah.
Somebody is not powerful if they don't have people behind them.
Yeah.
I mean, we could go onto the streets and scream whatever we want, but until we get people behind us, nobody's going to take us seriously. I mean, it's just a fact of the matter.
It's that crazy person again.
Yeah.
It's that crazy woman who shouts about Harry Potter. But the other thing that I have really kind of noticed with that too is God is clearly giving us as believers focus of, you need to be paying attention to what these villains are doing in the movie, because this is what the Antichrist is going to do. I'm showing you, I'm allowing this in movies to show you examples of what to look for when he comes.
Absolutely.
And so that's more of how I see it. It is almost terrifying now to watch movies where there's this huge villain that either is successful and takes over, but even just looking at history, I mean, you look at Hitler and the effect that he had, and there were a lot of people that thought that Hitler was the Antichrist because of how of how he did it, and the fact that the whole world went to war because of him. That's huge. And so that's more of how I look at it. There's not really, I'm with John in the sense of I don't look for like principles like you do of like dissecting movies of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, or Old Testament versus New Testament. I more look at what is in this movie that I can take into the real world and see if this happens.
Yeah.
I need to be aware of that.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like I said, there's a lot of Christians who sit there and be like, well, we don't know what's going to happen in the end times. Yes, we do. It's in our movies. It's what you're showing your kids.
Yeah. Also, read the last book of the Bible.
Yeah.
It's like, we
don't know.
We kind of have some books that deal with that, guys.
Yeah.
You got it sitting on your coffee table.
Yeah.
I mean,
We have
that
a guy.
thing that you take to church and you never open.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
That
advice,
app
but-
that's all the way at the bottom that says last use never.
Yeah. Carolyn.
So, I was thinking about this while you were talking, and because I'm an English major, I was really taught to see the symbology.
Yeah.
And I've always tried to see the symbology behind things, even before I was an English major, just because I had a very thoughtful mother who would read to me every night and who would ask me questions about what she read and wanted me to see the deeper meanings behind things. So I don't know. If I don't see a larger picture in some films, I don't necessarily think about ways in which they could be used, I guess. Well, okay. Sometimes I can tell authorial intent.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's accidental intent. But I do prefer movies that have some sort of moral to them, because it's not necessarily me seeing Christ in the movie as much as it is saying either this is an example of humanity, and what can happen if we allow such a thing to happen, or perhaps the movie is a warning and saying, don't be like this person.
Right. Yeah.
But, I mean, aside from some obvious allegories, I'm kind of with John in this, in that when I go to see a movie, I don't always go in it specifically looking for Christ.
Right.
I do try and watch movies that I think will be good for me, because I talked about how picky I was earlier.
Yeah.
But, yeah. I mean, of course, Narnia was the first very blatant, super duper one. And as I continued to read the books, it's so funny how, like, when he first wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, though, C.S. Lewis was like, what? It's not supposed to be Christian. What are you talking about? Blah, blah. And it's like, later as you go on, it's like, there's some revelation symbols in here. Some of the things that he says seems like they come straight out of Scripture. It's like, dude, you changed your mind. Clearly.
Oh, yeah.
You changed your mind, sweetie.
Yeah.
Hey guys, so we're not doing a ministry spotlight this month because COVID-19 happened. So we as a table team family want to encourage you to stay safe, to wash your hands, take shelter if needed, and pray for our country, for our friends and family, for the world. Because ultimately God is the only one who's going to get us through this crisis. Till next time, bye guys.
And sometimes, for me, I know I already mentioned authorial intent, but sometimes I get more enjoyment out of something knowing the person's background, particularly for Tolkien. Because I know we already mentioned, we knew it was going to happen, and I'm the one to bring it up. He was a devout Catholic, and it's very interesting to see the way his mythology works, because of he was a linguist, he was a mythologist, studied Norse history, early English and Irish, and all of that, area where he lived history, staunch Catholic again, and it's very interesting to see his worldviews within his overbranching mythology, because it's so freaking huge. I mean, he wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, and that was his life. And his son, Christopher Tolkien, has spent his life compiling and synthesizing and continuously trying to synthesize his father's early unfinished works and later unfinished works so that they could be presented to the public, so that way people could have an even broader, deeper understanding of his father and what his life's work was.
Right.
Because his inner life, his imagination was so ridiculously rich, but he also would go back and tweak things, and things would change names, and he would, he was just constantly, like, moving and bustling about, And to me, understanding the author helps me understand their intent in their work even more, because sometimes, even if I think there is something good in the work, sometimes the author may not have meant it to be there.
Right.
For example, this was a good one, just came to me. Bambi. Not talking about Disney, because the Disney Bambi, the
Sucks.
reason why, no.
I hate it. It makes me sad every time.
Okay, I get that, but I was about to say, the format of Bambi was that it came after Fantasia. And Bambi was sort of another Fantasia-style experience.
Okay.
Because there was a lot of music, not a whole lot of dialogue, and also, he had a Japanese artist come in. So that's why it feels, I'm not going to say very Miyazaki, but you have the balance of the, well, even if it's, like, the visual, it's not so much the visual as it is the way he uses space, the way he uses sound, and the placement of the music, how they show things. And so that's, that Bambi. And to me, that is a completely different conception from the book, which I read when I was in middle school, because I went on a tear where I wanted to read all of the books that the Disney movies were based on. And it's funny, I never actually got to Tarzan when I was in middle school. I got to that when I was in college, and I laughed my head off. But anyway, I like Disney Tarzan better. Let's just put it that way.
I'm pretty sure you like a lot of Disney things better than the books.
No, Bambi's good. Trust me, Bambi is very good, because there was a part...
I was saying as a general rule of thumb.
Depends. Really and truly depends.
Y'all talk about that later, because we don't have all day.
And remember, we're arguing about my personal beliefs.
Yeah.
Trust me, there are some things that I appreciate the way Disney did them, but I believe that their source material could have been done better. Or I like it in a different style. Anyway, back to Bambi. The book is very interesting because, I mean, you go through even more stages of Bambi's life. Of course, you don't have the musical numbers to act as sort of a guide and, you know, the transition of everything. And, you know, characters are different and whatnot. But it focuses quite a lot more on Bambi's relationship with his father, who they still use the term Great Prince of the Forest, which is in there. And, I mean, that's a clear allegory, you know, as it is. But that's not what killed me. I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but at one point I found myself in class reading the book and there were tears rolling down my face because of this one instance. You know how they always refer to, doesn't matter if it's a hunter or a camper or whatever, they say, man is in the forest. Well, near the very end of the book, Bambi and his father are in the woods, it's dark, and they can sense the hunter. And they see him, and they flee, and the hunter ends up hitting a tree, but the bullet ricochets back and kills him, like, instantly. And Bambi and his father stand over the body of this man, and Bambi's just dumbstruck that man can be killed. And so his father says, well, what does that tell you? And Bambi said that there is one, capital one, above man. And I was like, what?
That's amazing.
And part of that came from what felt like a building up of Bambi always being terrified of man.
Right.
And that man was all there is. Man was the highest level on the food chain. You were always under that terror of what could be next. But then he has this transcendent experience.
Right.
Now, I did talk to a professor later on about Bambi, and he's like, yeah, the author didn't really mean it to be Christian. They were looking at it from a more, not nature romanticist side, but something like that. But anyway, maybe transcendentalist? I don't remember. But, so to me, that's a difference between authorial intent, but what I found in a work that spoke to me, because to me, that was just blatantly, absolutely obvious, and a great fulfillment of what I had been sort of screaming at the characters in my head the whole time, you know, that, no, man is not above all, you know. I mean, sometimes I do that when I'm in a book. It's like, you stupid! Why are you doing that? You stupid! You know? And sometimes I had to put a book down because it's like, I can't deal with their crap today. I just can't.
Catcher in the Rye with me.
Oh.
I couldn't read the last chapter.
I don't even want to read that book. I
had to do a book report on it, made 100 on it, and I never even finished reading the book.
Good job.
Okay, Bella. Wonderful. But, yeah, that's sort of been my experience.
Yeah.
That was Caroline's rant.
Perfect.
Oh, please, yes.
Claire?
Mine has always been Star Wars. It just always has, and it probably always will be. I
Yeah.
feel like, I tell everybody, I feel like I've gone to a Bible study when I've watched Star Wars.
Yeah.
Because it's just so clear, like the dark and the light. It's just so clear. That's really all I have to say.
It's a more obvious kind of.
Yeah.
Although I always viewed Star Wars as more of a yin-yang.
Yeah.
I always saw it as like the Christians or the rebellion is fighting so hard against the darkness, and I feel like a lot of times Christians don't fight as hard as they should fight, and it's not clear. But just to take away and strip away everything and just go back to like dark light fighting against each other, it helps.
Yeah.
I don't know, it helps me a lot. So
What I think is really funny, and I'm sorry.
no, I'm done.
Because of my dad being the one that introduced Star Wars to me, I never saw it as Christian. But that's only because my dad loved like Oriental stuff. Like, he was very interested in Buddhism, in Taoism. Not that he was a practicing person at all, and I definitely inherited my love of Japan and other things from him. But there was this Western that was called Kung Fu. He absolutely loved it. Like, that was his whole wanting to be zen in life, having that deep sense of self-control. That was his thing. He absolutely loved it. And so he explained the Force to me in those terms, of yin and yang, the light and the dark. So I never saw it as Christian, because he was looking at it as what George Lucas originally created it as, a space western with monks.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but, I mean, I can definitely see where y'all are coming from. I just think it's interesting how our different experiences have colored the way that we see it.
Oh, yeah.
See, and I had a similar view of Star Wars until I started reading more into the back history of it, where the original Jedi Order was actually a mixture of light and dark working in tandem.
Yo, I cannot wait for the new series to come out. I'm telling you what, though. But yeah, no, I have a very similar experience in Star Wars as Clara does. More so once I felt like the Lord had kind of opened my eyes to being able to discern the spiritual realm. I was able to see, like, the Republic versus the rebels, or the Empire versus the rebellion, like that very clear dark and light as what is in that battle, that constant battle, as what's going on here on Earth, and then when you saw the space battles, what's going on in the spiritual realm. How are the angels fighting? Because there's this clear fight, and you get the red, going against the blue, and the greens, and the different, very clear colors that kind of depict that evil versus good field. And I want to touch on something that you said earlier, something that you were talking about with Bambi, is this, sometimes it's not the clearest storytelling. One of the things that I absolutely am obsessed with the newest Wonder Woman that came out is it doesn't necessarily depict a story in the Bible about Christ, but it gives I have never seen a movie where I walked in thinking one thing and walking out thinking I had just seen the face of the Lord. Like, Wonder Woman clearly depicts the qualities of Christ.
See, I watched a little of it, but I didn't watch the whole thing, and now I'm, like, revving to watch the whole original.
Watch the whole thing. Aside from a particular scene, like, obviously, like, there are things...
Romantic.
Yeah, there are obviously things that Christ didn't do.
Yeah.
But in that movie, you see this pure, innocent,
Adorable.
Yeah, human being fighting a fight for people she doesn't know and doesn't care she's going to care for these people. She sees the sin. She sees the evil. She sees it. And this evildoer is tempting her to, it is like, why fight a fight for people who don't care? Why not? Like, it is like Christ up there. Obviously, female in Wonder Woman, but Patty Jenkins, the director, did such a phenomenal job of, whether intentional or not, depicting Christ. And, like, I felt like there's not a single person who can go into that and not see Christ. Like, atheist, Buddhist, whatever, you walk in, you see Wonder Woman. It was the face of the Lord. And I loved it. Like, it's so good. So moving on to another topic, I want to ask your opinion on crossover music, being artists that are considered pop culture but with Christian backgrounds, or vice versa, Christian artists that are now seeping and seeking or leaking into the pop culture realm, i.e. we have Switchfoot back when we were younger.
Yep.
Switchfoot was a big, like,
I still love Switchfoot.
Big one. Many don't know this, but Evanescence was originally a Christian band that got rejected by the Christian radio stations, and so they created their more, I don't want to say emo, but it does have that that emo feel.
Oh, it does. I mean,
but if you listen to all of their songs, you listen to their storytelling, it's just very clear that they're a crossover band. They have some, choice words and whatnot, but it's very depicted as, like, you can see that crossover. And then more recently, Lauren Daigle.
Yeah.
I will not start on this one. Somebody else, because I can go on to that.
I would say you can also put in there Johnny Cash, who originally wanted to be a gospel singer, but
Johnny Cash.
Oh, he still was.
Yeah.
And Elvis, they still did.
I will also add, if we want to talk about Justin Bieber and Kanye West and their more recent introductions to the Christian world, we can throw that in there too. This is opinion time. I have opinions.
I think one of the things that I have had a kind of, because for me in music, I hear the lyrics. I don't hear necessarily the music. I mean, I like the music, but this is a big reason why when we have talked about music in the church, which we'll talk about later on, whenever we decide to choose it, this is why there is some differentiation and some agreeing to disagree with amongst us, because I don't focus so much on the music. I focus on the words. Right. And I'm not like everybody else. Yeah. But there was a song.
I'm totally not like everybody.
I'm totally not. But there's the first time that I was really aware of like what was going on with music artists was there's a song by Katy Perry, which is Rise.
Yes.
Have you heard it? Okay.
I have.
The part that she talks about, she calls to her angels.
Yes.
And the fact that she refers to, oh, ye of little faith.
Yes.
That was the first time I listened to a song that was not a blatant Christian artist.
Yes.
And was like, what? Since then, I have focused more on like the people who have changed, who have switched over and stuff like that. To me, it kind of goes back to the whole heart thing. Yeah. It's hard to transition your mind from somebody who wasn't originally a Christian, quote-unquote, artist, and all of a sudden they are like Kanye or like Justin Bieber or whatever. But to me, there's, like I said, there are lines, and this is the point that I'm making, there are lines and songs from people who are not Christian artists that are seeping in there anyway.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so it shouldn't matter if Kanye all of a sudden is writing more Christian music, if Justin Bieber is focusing on singing gospel at his church. That shouldn't matter, because if you go in and you look at some of these mainstream songs that we don't classify as Christian, there's Christian elements that are getting thrown in there.
Absolutely.
So I do think that there are some bands and there are some people. Lauren Daigle is amazing. There are songs that she sings that I just like get overwhelmed, the fact that she has that spirit within her. Same with Switchfoot. I've talked about the Bible teacher that I had at my private school. One of the things on our final exam for the semester was dissecting Switchfoot lyrics.
Yeah.
It was like, I didn't do well on that class, that particular test. I'd been sick for a week. But yeah, I mean, that was a huge thing. So I was, due to the fact that I went to a private school with a awesome Bible teacher, I was exposed to stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I was exposed to and having to look at where Christ was within Christian songs and where worldly views were coming up within worldly songs. Yeah. There's an artist who literally, you talk about going completely 180 from the Christian lifestyle. We looked at his lyrics and the stuff that was coming up in his music, and even him, who's completely 180, I mean, lived the life that what we sit there and say somebody who is not a Christian and doesn't believe in Christ should have no morals.
Right.
Like, he lived it. Like, he did everything on stage. Yeah. Like, I mean, just horrible person. And even Christ shows up in his music. And it's, so that's my thing, is I just think it's cool when those elements pop up. It's okay. Good job, Clara.
The headphones, it was the computer. It's okay. Sorry. It's okay.
When those elements pop up. Yeah. Like, and throughout music.
To piggyback off that, Lady Gaga has her song, Born This Way.
Yeah.
Do I agree with everything that she's singing about in that song? Not necessarily being of faith background. Like, I think there are elements in that can be controversial. Right. That's as far as
But the fact that she refers to capital H-I-M. Yep.
Like, that right there just gave me a whole new respect with her choice of media and her choice of walking forward. And I personally I like pop culture music. I do enjoy listening to mainstream media and what they have to offer. Lady Gaga being one of those individuals where I'm like, you just said a sentence that changes how I feel. Her song Judas is not about being a sinner.
No.
It's about how are we Judas.
And see, I had to go and I had to listen to an interview by her
Yes.
about the song
Yeah.
to fully understand that.
Yes.
Because if you, again, just read the lyrics or watch the video, and that's the other thing that irritates me. There's stuff that comes up in music, and then they make the music video for it. And it's
Yeah.
like, you ruined it!
Well, that's unfortunately that has
Amen.
a lot to do with producers and directors and not the actual artist's like
I know.
vision, which sucks. But yeah, it's insane to sit there. I listened to Judas and I talked to my dad about it when it first came out, and he was like, "No, this isn't about like him as the sinner. This isn't about Judas. This is about how we kind of are
Yeah.
Judas
Yeah.
in the Bible." Judas is kind of representing all of mankind right here.
Yeah.
Being like, I'm gonna spit on him and I'm gonna turn my back, but Judas himself still needed Christ,
Yeah.
and even admits to that. But Caroline, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I was gonna say, not to be the prude, but I just never got into groups like that. Like, I had my VeggieTales, I had the animated stories from the Old New Testament, like I said before, and there was a song for every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised more on the traditional stuff, but when I say traditional stuff, I don't just mean church hymns. I mean,
Right.
I love gospel, I love bluegrass. Oh my word, that stuff is good. It's not country. To me, bluegrass is like the original grassroots stuff.
Mhm.
Yep.
Like, I cannot stand modern country at all. Just
Yeah, it's Western to be exact. Everybody
Yeah.
confuses that with Southern stuff. It's like, no, that's
like
Western.
yeah, that's completely different. But I like, for me, I'm with Jordan, and at the same time, like, the lyrics are important to me, but at the same time also the quality of the music, just because I was raised by two musicians who were both very picky people.
Yeah.
And that has made me also a very picky person. I mean, even for myself, when I sing or I play ukulele for something, I am my own worst critic.
Mhm.
You know, and so
You missed the live podcast.
I did go back and watch
mess
it.
up. Did you see the when she was playing her uke?
my voice broke when I tried to go higher.
I did. I enjoyed the second half of the podcast. I didn't get to participate, but I did enjoy watching it.
I wish the fur cat I wish the first part of the
The fur
podcast
cat.
would have
Yeah,
saved,
it's okay.
but
It's okay.
it happens. We answered your
But-
questions, I swear.
So
I
that's
didn't have low time.
that. I mean, that was just kind of my thing, you
Yeah.
know. Like, I grew up with sort of clear spheres. Like, this is secular, this is Christian,
Right.
and sometimes there is a little bleed, but I just like sort of keeping my peas from my mashed potatoes, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes it really just depends on the artist, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it's down to the wire kind of thing, you
Yeah.
know. But I mean, if somebody else likes something, I'm not gonna poo-poo it, you know.
Right.
Everybody gets fed in different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah. Clara.
I'm a little stumped because music is so much for me personally. Like, I'm always listening to music. My
Yeah.
whole family plays, and it's like my whole family, we're all musicians.
Yeah.
My dad leads worship. I've been singing with him since I was 8. So, like,
Dang, girl.
I've done harmonies, I've done solos, like, I've done all of that, and I love music, and I don't know how I feel about this particular topic. I don't know where I stand with it yet.
Mhm.
I don't know where I stand with the crossovers yet, because it kind of, I don't know if I like it or if I don't like it just because they're crossing over, because I'm like, oh, I want to have those two songs of, like, rebellious time or, like, whatever, but,
Right.
like, I don't know if I like it or I don't, but, yeah.
I think that's
haven't
okay.
decided.
Yeah.
I need to think on it.
I like crossover artists because of their boldness. I think it can be done incorrectly, and it can be done in a very cheesy way where we forget about them. Like Switchfoot, we kind of are in this situation where people
Yeah.
are probably like, "Who's Switchfoot?" Like, they just
Look them
released.
up. They're amazing.
I have
Yeah.
an older sister, I know.
Yes, they have a new album.
Yeah.
They released last year, but nobody knows about it. It's not on mainstream media anymore.
No, because they're classified as the 90s Christian artists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're not considered crossover. I love Evanescence, and they just went on tour, and I think that they're not a crossover, but they are. And I think any artist with the intention of bringing in the gospel and or bringing in positive, uplifting
Yeah.
sounds can be considered crossover. I think we don't give enough justice to these quote-unquote crossover artists because of the stance that they're taking. I think Lauren Daigle has done a phenomenal job of saying, I'm a Christian artist. She has 2 very beautiful Christian albums and then created this new one and was like, this is it, this is what it is. And then she was invited on Ellen DeGeneres. I think what's so cool about God is he has blinded people who are completely opposed to what she's singing about.
Yeah.
And is now performing that on their platforms.
Yeah.
Because she's not labeling herself as a crossover artist. She's labeling herself as a pop artist.
Yeah.
And people are accepting her in that.
Well, it's the same, and this is not even talking about, like, Christian in general. This is just how we do music anyway. We get so irritated when people jump bubbles.
Yeah.
You look at how, and I know there's going to be a lot of criticisms with Taylor Swift, but Taylor Swift started as a country singer. She has moved to pop. There are so many people who now fight that she never has been a country singer.
She absolutely was.
But that's what she was when she started.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but look at her music.
There's a reason why she won a Country Music Award.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fact of the matter. I'm not going to sit there and say she's a country music star now.
Right.
I'll agree with that. But why can't we have artists that, I understand if you have a more, like, particular style, like, I get that, and that's where the kind of classifications came from. But everybody gets so irritated. I'm not even talking about producers or anything, but everybody gets so irritated when people jump styles in one album. To me, that's like an actor going and doing a horror movie and then doing a romantic movie. You're showing your range.
It's like a dancer being a ballet dancer and then jumping over and becoming a modern dancer.
You're showing your range. You're showing what you can and what you can't do.
Absolutely.
That should be allowed in music, and music is like the only real one that I feel like people just get so irritated when they jump. That child actors, when the child actors grow up.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother thing.
Well, and I think that's why Kanye West is getting a lot of backlash.
Yeah.
If he's a Christian and he is being, like, yes, he could be doing this for the media. He could literally have put out this...
That's not our place to say.
Yeah, that's not my place to judge. He is sitting there and putting out great hip-hop music...
Kanye West in his Conway vest.
For Christian artists.
Conway
it's
vest.
so good. I've listened to every song, read every lyric, and I am very impressed by this album.
Yeah.
Justin Bieber, he can go and preach it. You know, you should practice what you preach, and you should practice what you're living. I cannot stand his newest song. I can't. I think the new song is repulsive and disgusting. Yummy? I can't stand it.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely repulsive. But you're going and you're singing on stage... at your church and leading worship, but that's what you're putting out. Yeah. That's where I have an issue, is like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Yeah. Kanye has a whole album and is preaching and is talking about his testimony. He's not going out and putting a stupid song out that's repulsive. But I think we don't give enough credit to these crossover artists.
I think with Justin Bieber personally, and I think this happens sometimes with people who are starting on that path, they still, and especially since Justin started at such a young age, they're still such a huge influence by his producers and his people. He's getting to that point. Yeah, he's getting to that point where he's seeing what he needs to do, and that's why he's leading worship, and that's why he's telling people when he does leave worship and preach to not film him, because he doesn't want that to be the focus. Yeah. So I think he's getting there, but I think he still is at the point where he's having a hard time saying no to his people and his producers and what they're... And that, honestly, that takes huge amount of courage to risk your whole career and say no.
I mean, take a look at what did happen
to Kanye. Had, and I know that that's... that's not what I was Kanye had so much respect already. Yeah. He was such a respected whatever that his producers at that point are like, just tell us what you want to do. Yeah. Like, we're making millions of dollars off you. You have free will to do whatever.
I think and this is my opinion, and I don't want to sound like a hypocrite and saying I'm judging what Justin Bieber's doing over what Kanye's doing. But I think if Justin Bieber was literally sitting there saying, I can't say no to the people that want me to still be this idol. Yeah. But I feel convicted to do this. Yeah. That's choosing sin.
I don't think it's so much that he's sitting there and saying, I can't say no. I don't think he sees the hurt right now. Does that make sense? Yes. I don't think he understands that what he's doing out in the public is having just as much of an influence, if not
Yes.
more, than what he's doing in the church. I think in his mind he separates the two, and it's not separated.
Right. And I think if and I don't want to sound bad, but I hope that's the case.
Yeah.
Because if that's not the case, there's hypocrisy there, and that's really kind of that sits really in a bad place
preaching.
with me.
Yeah, if he's preaching, that's the biggest thing, because he will have more condemnation than it says.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think from what I've seen, it's he differentiates the two. It's
Yeah.
almost like this is my
Work.
church life and this is my work life.
Yeah.
I think that's how right now he sees it, and I hope and I pray that those two eventually blend and he sees what he's doing.
Yeah.
But
even what he could do.
Yeah,
he doesn't
or what
even
he could
realize
do.
what he could do.
Yeah, but I think right now it's well, this is work and this is church and this is home. Like I think
Yes.
he's categorized it.
Yeah. Which,
So-
I mean, we all go through stages and seasons like that.
And he's still really young.
He is young. I'll give him that. Really quick, I would like to go around, and if you have a TV show that you do feel like
Really quick.
has the ability of utilizing the gospel, one very quick reason why. Do you want to go
Start with
first?
you.
No, not really.
Okay.
The obvious one to me is Doctor Who. I mean, you have the Doctor who comes in who keeps saving the humans. He doesn't really have a connection. He's not one of them, but this is the race that he keeps coming in and he keeps saving and he keeps self-sacrificing and he hates the fact when other people try to sacrifice because he feels like that's his job.
Right.
So yeah, Doctor Who. That was my quick.
I was gonna say that was a little fast. For me,
Yeah, we just gotta be
it's specifically Star Trek: The Next Generation. That is my go-to season, my go-to series. There are just so many where, in this one, not in the original, that they didn't deal with matters of morality and trying to do what's right. It's just, I feel like because the second season, it's more mature in how they handle, I would say, not the violence, but you know what I mean. The way they stage things, because in the original series, it can be so cheesy. And sometimes the cheesiness, to me, draws away from the impact of certain episodes. And to its detriment, because there's some really good episodes in the original series. But in the second one, I mean, I know I'm biased because I freaking love Patrick Stewart to death. Oh my word, so many good actors in that. But they're always questioning, are we doing the right thing? Can we have made the situation better? They're trying to make fair rules for everyone. They've sometimes encountered entities that claim that they're God, and they put them to the test. And it's just really... Q is different. I'm thinking about the planet that was enslaved, but anyway. Janeway's cool too.
I love her.
Voyager's cool too. It's just, I feel like they had a lot more diplomatic missions and a lot more wrestling. Because in Voyager, their main thing was, I want to get home. So I think that's why I like Next Generation so much. Just because they're wrestling.
I don't know. I personally feel like the gospel is not really mixed into TV shows as much as in movies, because I think producers get so focused on character development, and in this day and age, character development is focused on relationships, romantic relationships more so than anything else. And I don't feel like it's mixed in, at least in the TV shows that I have watched, and I feel like TV shows are kind of the last thing. You mentioned TV shows, and I was like, okay, so not a lot then, because I don't really feel like it shows in TV shows, just because they're not so focused on the plot. And the plot is where you can, because that's like the main area where you could share the gospel. Yeah. And it's more so character development, and that's great and all, but it mainly just consists of like relationships and conflict. It doesn't really...
Yeah.
I'm about to say, I will piggyback off yours, because to try to find this stuff, there needs to be a beginning, middle, and end. In a TV series, there's a beginning, and then it's an infinite middle.
Yeah. Or there's maybe a finale.
Unless there's a true game plan.
Yeah, but if there's a true game plan, which is rare.
Yeah, exactly. And it's mainly based around the characters.
And I think the big reason, and you're right, I think the big reason is because with TV, theoretically, they have an infinite amount of time to show that stuff. And there are shows that have stood the test of time and have been able to carry. But when it's a 2-hour or 3-hour movie, I mean, you have to get everything in right then.
Mm-hmm.
With TV shows, I think if you were to take the TV shows and you were to compile them, like all the seasons, compile them, and I'm not saying there is, but like,
so we
for
should take
example,
like 14 weeks to watch like an entire TV show.
Exactly.
I'm down.
But
14 weeks, honey. Give me a few
No, I'm
days.
kidding.
Yeah.
I was about to say, I can knock out some series in like a week.
But honestly, when you sit there and you compile them and binge more, and you're able to make connections, because
Yeah.
we grew up in the time where episodes were week to week,
Right.
so there was a disconnect
Right.
between
Heard that.
between different episodes. But now, if you sit there and you watch it almost like a movie,
Mm-hmm.
there's
You actually
stuff
see
that
the story.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say there's stuff that definitely comes up. Gilmore Girls stood the test of time.
Absolutely.
Friends has
Love
stood the
that.
test of time.
Yep. The Office.
The Office has stood the test of time. All of these different shows, you can sit there and you can compile and you can see the Christian elements in it when you. And I'm not promoting binge watching,
I am.
but
We're in quarantine.
Me too.
Do it.
yeah, okay. If we're in quarantine, but like, don't quit your job to binge watch.
No.
I'm just saying. If you have an afternoon and you have nothing to do while you're in quarantine, binge watch some stuff and see what you can find. Just saying.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I think in
Yeah.
TV shows, you have to view it almost like a movie and
Exactly.
see the full storyline, and in order to do that, it has to have already been canceled. Like, I hate saying that, but watching an active TV show and binge watching that, where there's still seasons coming out, you're not going to get it until that end is there.
Yeah.
And then maybe a sudden ending and it's not satisfying and you're like, you were building up to this. What did you do?
Lost.
Firefly.
I love Firefly so much.
Firefly's true ending was Serenity. You have to watch Serenity. It ties it up in a nice little bow.
It's so good. I'm actually taking the reality TV show route for this.
Go, girl.
okay.
Because
You have 7 minutes.
one show that I have consistently seen, and it has been a constant where I've consistently seen the respect of faith, is Big Brother. And let me tell you why. The only book that group of people secluded in a house. Now, I do not condone watching Big Brother
yeah,
unless
you
you're certain.
love this
I love
one.
it's my favorite TV show. It's my favorite reality show in the world. The only book they allow the house guests to have, they can't have pens and paper, they
Yeah.
don't have is the Bible.
Yeah.
Period. It is the one thing where my mom and I always could sit down over the summer and watch, and then always had a Bible in the rooms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that right there, for me, is the smallest nugget that we can have, but it's still a constant show of faith
Yeah.
that they're allowing these people from all walks of life to have their book.
Yeah.
And it's not a direct depiction, but it's something that brings me back to it.
It's like a little Easter egg.
Exactly.
It's
It's
a
a
little
little
cool
Jesus
thing.
Easter egg. Easter's coming. But for this one, it's already happened, so
Yeah.
we've had Easter.
Easter came.
Easter came.
Despite COVID, Easter came.
Despite what people say, there is Easter. Jesus still rose from the dead. We have one shout out for today,
Yes.
and it is the individual. I feel like it's kind of self promotion too. This is weird.
It's okay.
But because my fiance was the reason we had this particular topic, I want to give the podcast he works so hard on a shout
Yeah.
out.
Go for it.
At Pizza and Parsecs. It's a super nerdy, super fun podcast that if you really love nerd culture, we talk a lot about this kind of stuff on that podcast. Like, we dive deeper into different segments and deeper into different nerd culture things, and sometimes get to relate it to Jesus, and it's really kind of cool. But because it was his, and I try not to give his name out on the podcast, I went ahead and was like, you get a shout out, fiance. Go follow Pizza and Parsecs.
And we support it because we support Liv.
You know, it's fun.
Yeah.
You
For the
know,
most part.
I enjoy it. I like podcasting. It's fun. When he presented to me, I was like, let's do it. Like, let's podcast. And so
Yeah.
it's really fun to podcast about two of my passions, but separately, like bringing them into
Yeah.
two different locations. And
I just
It
like the
doesn't
idea
bleed
of he's
over.
like, this is a good thing to talk about. blam, sets the microphone down in front of you. Welcome to Pizza and Parsecs. Like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready.
It's quite literally like that. But I usually am ready, which is great. Like, it's like, okay, we saw not Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
We saw Birds of Prey.
Oh, yeah.
We saw Birds of Prey, and we're like, don't say anything. Microphone. All right, let's go. Let's talk all about it, 'cause it was so good. And we did that with Little Women as well. We got in the car. We're like,
Wait, you were in the car when you filmed that?
No.
The
We
whole
got in
ride
the car.
home, they
we
said
literally
nothing.
we were just like, it was good.
We just vibing.
Microphone. All right, so let's talk about Little Women because it was so good. Like, we were so stoked. But we it's more centered around our relationship and our likes, our mutual like nerdiness, and it's pretty fun.
And Call to the Table likes to take a little credit that we inspired your fiance to do his podcast.
I mean, he had done podcasts before, so there was.
Shush! I'm taking credit.
Now he's like, they have Liv. I want Liv.
That's not how it is at all. We find that we talk about this stuff normally, just like how our podcast came about. We found that it just naturally came up, and like, you know, and even if nothing comes of it, like, let's just do it because it's a fun project to document our beginnings and then continuing on. Like, we do talk about our marriage and our future marriage and our wedding planning. And
our marriages to each other.
And they really did go to our house.
No, we didn't! But it's fun to, like, go back and listen to that sometimes. So, yeah. Follow Pizza and Parsecs.
Okay. All right, Johnny G, take us out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Call to the Table.
You're welcome.
If you would like to get in contact with us for
I don't wanna.
We apologize for the person that'd probably be taking, your comments not wanting to, but...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm done.
No more?
That was a non-committal.
I was going to say, that was a non-promise.
Go.
Non-committal.
For any questions, comments, future episodes, concerns, prayer requests, please get in contact with us at
Or don't,
Call to
it's
the
fine.
Table.
Whatever.
Or just sit in your bed and watch movies.
Yes!
You can get in contact with us at
Binge
calltothetable@gmail.com.
Or you can call John's number at...
Just kidding.
Or Call to the Table Pod at Facebook and Instagram.
Bye.
I'm done, I promise. I really am finished.
So was I.
Okay, good.